Hi everyone, Mrs. Miller here, coming to you with the first official video book talk of the 2010 summer. This week I am bringing you a book that I'm super excited to talk to you about. It's one that was highly anticipated when it came out back in May, and it's one that no doubt some of you have already read. And if you find that once you hear what the book is, you say to yourself, well, I've already read this book, you need to leave us some comments down there on the blog so that you can convince other people to read it, because trust me, this is one that if you haven't read yet, you're going to want to read. It's a book by an author that many of you know and who has written one of the most popular series of books to come out in the last few years, and I am going to go on the record today and say that I think this book and this series has the potential to actually be better than this author's very famous series called Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Yes, that's right. This book and this series by Rick Riordan, I think, is going to end up being better than Percy Jackson. Well, in order to see if I'm right, you're going to need to read this week's book called The Red Pyramid by Rick Riordan, author of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. It's worth 18 AR points. It's a big book at 500 pages, but trust me, once you get into it, you are not going to want to put it down. As you know, the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series is all about a young boy who discovers that he is in fact half Greek god, and it follows his adventures as he tries to save Mount Olympus from some evil gods who want to destroy it. And Rick Riordan has put down his obsession with Greek gods for now. He's going to pick it back up again very soon, which if you tune in this week later on, I'm going to tell you a little bit about his next venture into Greek gods and goddesses. But for now, he's telling us all about the Kane Chronicles. And our book, as you can probably guess from the title, deals with some kids who find out, in fact, that the Egyptian gods and goddesses from Egyptian mythology are, in fact, real. And so let me tell you a little about the book. It starts with actually two narrators. Last series, Percy Jackson series, Percy was our narrator. But in this series, Rick Riordan actually splits the narrating duties between his two main characters, Carter and Sadie Kane. Carter and Sadie are brother and sister. Carter is 14 and Sadie is 12. It's not your typical brother-sister relationship. In fact, even though they're brother and sister, Carter and Sadie don't see each other very often. And in fact, they don't really know each other very well, and they don't really get along. When Carter and Sadie were young, their mother was killed in a tragic accident. And unfortunately, their mother's parents, their grandparents, blamed their father for their mother's death. And in fact, they sued and tried to get custody of both of the kids. Well, in the end, a decision was reached that, in fact, Sadie would go to live with her grandparents in London. Her mother was British and from London, and Carter would stay with their father, Dr. Julius Kane. And for a while, this is the situation most of their life. Sadie's got a pretty stable life. She lives in London. She has tons of friends. She goes to school. She's very outspoken, a little bit punk rock chick. And Carter travels all over the world with his father, who is the leading expert on Egypt and the Egyptian gods and goddesses. In fact, Carter tells us at one point that if you've ever gone into a library and picked up a book on ancient Egypt, chances are good his dad has written it. Even though it sounds like a very exciting, glamorous life, globe-trotting all over the world, Carter literally lives out of a suitcase. And his father's a pretty demanding guy. He holds Carter to a pretty high standard, and Carter finds himself kind of resenting his lifestyle after a while, never being in one place more than a couple of days. Carter has very few friends. And so on those few days a year, and that's all, that Carter and Sadie and their father get together, Carter and Sadie really have nothing to talk about. Sadie's a little jealous that Carter gets to have all of these adventures and spend time with their dad, and Carter, on the other hand, is a little jealous that Sadie gets to have a normal life with friends and school. And so whenever they get together, it's a little awkward. And the book starts, in fact, on a Christmas Eve. Carter and his father, Dr. Kane, have come to London to spend some time with Sadie. On the way there, Carter notices that his dad is a little nervous, a little distracted, and Carter doesn't really know why that is. But when they pick up Sadie, they decide to go to spend an evening at the Museum of History there in London. And they get in after hours. They're the only ones there. The caretaker lets them in because they know Dr. Kane. He's very, very well known. And while they're there, their father suddenly enlists them in this covert operation, and Carter and Sadie find themselves locking the museum caretaker in his office, and their father says, "You need to stand back, stand over there, while I make things right." And so Carter and Sadie have no idea what's going on, but they watch as their father recites this incantation in front of the Rosetta Stone. And in fact, the Rosetta Stone ends up exploding, and out comes the evil Egyptian god Set. And Set actually imprisons their father in this gold casket, and the Rosetta Stone explodes, and the museum part of it blows to bits, and Set and their father disappear before their eyes. The police come, of course, and they want to question Sadie and Carter, who have no idea what they've just seen. And it turns out they believe their dad actually is a terrorist, which they know is not true. But in all the chaos, shows up their Uncle Amos, their father's brother, who, in order to keep Sadie and Carter safe, decides to whisk them away to Brooklyn, where he says they can be protected. Because apparently Sadie and Carter are very valuable because, surprise, surprise, it turns out that their father and mother both are descended from ancient Egyptian pharaohs, and they have Egyptian royal blood in their veins, and therefore perhaps they are starting to develop magical powers that are descended from the royal Egyptian gods. And so when they get to Brooklyn and are protected in their Uncle Amos's magical mansion on the river, they find out their family's history, find out that their father actually wanted to keep them apart in order to keep them safe, and that's why they've lived apart all of these years. And Sadie and Carter cannot believe what they're hearing. And so as their Uncle Amos leaves to try and follow Set to see what he's up to, the mansion is attacked and by these evil Egyptian monsters. And it turns out Sadie's pet cat Muffin is actually the ancient Egyptian goddess Bast, who transforms from the cat into this cat-like woman who whisks them away from the mansion as it's being destroyed. And the part I'm going to read to you today comes from right after that incident. Bast, Carter, and Sadie are fleeing to Central Park, where there is an Egyptian monument, an obelisk, and Bast tells Sadie that because she is descended from the Egyptian pharaohs, she should have magical abilities, and she should be able to open a portal into the Duat, which is actually the Egyptian kind of underworld. And if she can open a portal, they can escape to safety. Needless to say, they are being pursued by these men carrying what seems to be kind of a royal box, and they are pursuing Carter, Sadie, and Bast. And the part I'm going to read to you, Carter and Sadie are facing their very first major Egyptian gods.